Unit 2, Denying Qualia and the Example of Color. Section 1, Breaking the Qualia Spell. Geoffrey Gray discusses three possible explanations for qualia: functionalism, neurophysiology, and quantum mechanical processes. But, of course, there is always a much simpler alternative. Simply deny that qualia exist. The most prominent exponent of this extreme position is the American philosopher Dennett. We looked briefly at his position in the first unit, but here in Unit 2 we'll examine his anti-qualia theory in more detail. Dennett claims to be able to break the spell and dissipate the magic of qualia. Qualia, he says, have two important features in common. Quote, "On the one hand, they are our most intimate acquaintances. There is nothing we could know any better than the items of our personal phenomenologies, or so it seems. On the other hand, they are defiantly inaccessible to materialistic science. Nothing could be less like an electron or a molecule or a neuron than the way the sunset looks to me now, or so it seems." End quote. Dennett adds that philosophers have found qualia puzzling in two ways. Firstly, the special intimacy of qualia. How and why do we have privileged access to directly apprehend these items? Second, the second puzzle concerns qualia's unusual intrinsic qualities. How could anything composed of material particles provide so much pleasure and entertainment, or matter so much to us, the way that, for example, pain does? The problem, Dennett says, is that philosophers, and anyone else who's thought about it, have started with their strongest and clearest intuitions about their own minds. But, Dennett continues, these intuitions form a mutually self-supporting closed circle of doctrines, imprisoning the imagination. Despite discovering the paradoxes inherent in this closed circle of ideas, previous philosophers have lacked a whole alternative vision, and so trusting their still strong intuitions have been dragged back into the paradoxical prison. This is why the literature on qualia gets more and more convoluted instead of resolving itself in agreement. But Dennett claims to have just such an alternative vision, his multiple drafts model. By using this model, he claims, the problems of qualia can be dissolved. According to Dennett's multiple drafts model, there are a variety of sensory inputs from a given event, and also a variety of interpretations of these inputs. The sensory inputs arrive in the brain and are interpreted at different times, so a given event can give rise to a succession of discriminations, like the multiple drafts of a story that's being written and rewritten. As soon as each discrimination has been made, it's available to influence behavior. It doesn't have to wait to enter consciousness. As in several other theories, the multiple drafts model understands conscious experience as taking time to occur. So percepts or qualia do not instantaneously arise in the mind in their full richness. What's unique about Dennett's theory is his denial of any clear and unambiguous boundary separating conscious experiences from all other processing. According to Dennett, consciousness is to be found in the actions and flows of information from place to place, rather than some singular view containing our experience. There is no central experiencer who confers a durable stamp of approval on any particular draft. Dennett claims that different parts of the neural processing system assert more or less control at different times. To reach consciousness, a process must have enough influence to affect what the mouth will say or what the body will do. There's no disembodied self deciding which inputs are edited into our current drafts. This is instead decided by the self-organizing functioning of the network, and at the same level as the circuitry that conveys information bottom up. The conscious self, Dennett claims, exists only as an abstraction, visible at the level of the intentional stance. Consciousness exists, but not independently of behavior and behavioral disposition, which can be studied via what Dennett calls heterophenomenology. Heterophenomenology, which means literally the phenomenology of another, not oneself, is Dennett's attempt to describe an explicitly third-person scientific approach to the study of consciousness and other mental phenomena. It consists of applying the scientific method with an anthropological bent, combining the subject's self-reports with all other available evidence to determine their mental state. The goal is to discover how the subject sees the world, him or herself, without taking the accuracy of the subject's view for granted. Heterophenomenology is an alternative to traditional Cartesian phenomenology, which Dennett calls lone wolf autophenomenology, to emphasize the fact that it accepts the subject's self-reports as being authoritative. In contrast, heterophenomenology considers subjects' reports as authoritative only as to how things seem to them.